Microphone. There we go. Welcome, everybody, to the Cultural and Social Standing Policy Committee, Thursday, October the 19th. City Clerk, can I have a roll call, please? Oh.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Campbell,
Here.
Councillor Schmidt-Rempel. Oh, sorry.
Here.
Councillor Carlson,
Also here. Also here.
Councillor Palladino. Also in attendance are the Mayor, Higgin, and Councillor Croson.
And
Acting Mayor Middleton Hope.
Oh, Acting Mayor Middleton Hope, I didn't see him.
And now the seat between Jen and Jeff is podium.
It's okay.
All right. The City of Lethbridge acknowledges that we are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains and pays respect to the Blackfoot people, past, present, and future, while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationships to the land. City of Lethbridge is also the home of the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. We'll start off with the consent agenda, adoption of the agenda. From Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, be it resolved that the agenda of the regular meeting of the Cultural and Social Standing Policy Committee on October 19th, 2023 be adopted as presented. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Thank you very much. Mr. City Clerk, are there any changes to the agenda?
There are none.
Then with that, seeing no changes, I will call for the vote.
All in favor? I guess that's it. Good. Okay, consent agenda. Be it resolved from Councillor Carlson that the minutes of the Cultural and Social Standing Policy Committee held on September 14th, 2023 be approved, and the chair and the city clerk designate be authorized to sign the same. Further be resolved, the status of initiatives for October 19th, 2023 be received as information. Councillor Carlson.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did review it briefly. I saw no errors or omissions, but I know that Acting Mayor Middleton Hope and Councillor Schmidt-Rempel read it much closer than I do. So I'll ask if any of my colleagues saw anything for the minutes.
I see nothing.
Then before I call for the vote, question on the status of initiatives. Because we are combining some committees, do these just roll over into the new committee? Okay.
The answer is yes. We'll take a look at any initiatives that are outstanding and we'll put them into the appropriate committee.
Thank you. One other question I had on that, and it is so trivial of a question, but many of the resolutions that follow these status of initiatives directed them to specific SPCs. And I know it's just a wording language thing, but do we have to amend any of that, or does it matter? I'm just looking for tracking. If somebody's trying to track something and all of a sudden it moved from this committee to another committee, but is that an issue?
It is not an issue because the direction of council is clear, and so we'll amend them accordingly to reflect the future direction of the committees.
Excellent. Thank you for that. I will call for the vote.
Question's been called. Unanimous. Moving ahead to, there's no presentations, we're just, okay. These are all submissions, and Mr. Malcolm is here for any questions. We'll start with 6.1, and this comes from Councillor Schmidt-Rempel. Before I read the resolution, are there any questions about this approval from the CWSS Advisory Committee?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Councillor Carlson.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Malcolm, I've already given him a heads up that these were the questions I was going to ask. The FCSS dollars, the province of Alberta increased our funding in their budget. And so this is somewhat of the outcome of that we've got some extra dollars that we can then put out to our community organizations, correct?
That is correct. Earlier this year, the government of Alberta increased the budget by just over 4%, which means that there's more funding for us to then allocate out. So it'll be a combination of that with just previously unallocated funds.
Okay, thank you for that. Further question is, when the province increases FCSS allocations to municipalities, it's an 80-20 partnership. Where, do we have enough dollars allocated from our budget line to cover the extra 20 on our end?
So you're correct in that it is an 80-20 split. The amount of money that the city of Lethbridge contributes was previously about 23%. And so with the increase, we are still above the 20% commitment. So there was no further municipal taxation required. And we didn't feel like coming forward and making that request unless specifically tasked with that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Thank you very much. And just one question on this. Does this use up FCSS funds then for the year? We know this is an addition, but do we expect any additional funds? Does this use up everything for the year in this pot then?
The funding requests that we're bringing forward today, we intend to put those funds into the 2024 FCSS agreements. And so as long as that we are able to do that with the carryover approval from the government of Alberta, that puts us with having all of the 2023 unallocated being allocated within 2024.
Okay, and we don't have any concerns with the government not approving that?
We have historically never had the government of Alberta not approve a carryover request, and we've been in contact with other municipalities that have also received this increase, and they are planning to do the same.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from my colleagues? I see none. So I'll read the resolution from Councillor Schmidt-Rempel. Be it resolved that the Cultural and Social Standing Policy Committee recommends that City Council adopt the following recommendation of the CWSS Advisory Committee regarding funding from the Provincial Family and Community Support Services, FCSS, funding portfolio. Approve up to $91,506 of currently unallocated FCSS funding to be allocated to existing agreements that have been approved under historical CWSS procurements in alignment with FCSS funding eligibility criteria. 2, approve up to $150,000 of currently unallocated FCSS funding to be incorporated into the Blood Tribe Administration Blackfoot Resource Hub Agreement with no increase to the total annual budget. And 3, approve the ability for administration to adjust funding allocations to be adjusted within already approved agreements. And further, that the city manager and city clerk be authorized to sign the appropriate amended funding agreement, and such agreement shall be subject to continuous administrative review and optional renewal at the discretion of the City of Lethbridge pending available funding from the Government of Alberta. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Thank you very much, and thank you both very much for being here to speak to this, and thank you to the CWSS Advisory Committee for their work on determining how to allocate those funds. The request is to be funded through the provincial FCSS funding portfolio. There are no City of Lethbridge tax funding being solicited to meet this allocation request. I obviously need more coffee today. The Government of Alberta provided a 4.5 increase to FCSS base budget in the spring of 2023, which has resulted in an approximate $82,000 increase to the annual FCSS budget. If none of my colleagues have any questions, I will call for the vote on this.
I see no questions. Question's been called. All in favor? All right, we'll go to 6.2. Okay. I'll read the resolution first. This is from Councillor Carlson. Be it resolved that the Cultural and Social Standing Policy Committee recommends that City Council, number 1, adopt the following recommendation of the CWSS Advisory Committee regarding funding from the Federal Reaching Home Funding Portfolio. Approve up to $230,000 of Federal Reaching Home funding to be utilized until March 31st, 2024 for a 24-hour drop-in center over the winter months. Authorize the city manager and city clerk to sign the appropriate fee-for-service funding agreement, and such agreement shall be subject to continuous administrative review and optional renewal at the discretion of the City of Lethbridge pending available funding from the Government of Canada. 2, to meet the March 31st, 2024 spending deadlines for the Federal Reaching Home funding, City Council delegates the approval of the estimated remaining balance of unallocated Reaching Home funding for the 2023-2024 year to the City Manager with support of CWSS Advisory Committee, and authorize the City Manager and City Clerk to sign the appropriate fee-for-service funding agreements. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a few questions on this, but I'll open it up to my colleagues first to see if they have any questions. The less I speak, the better.
Sure. Just money, I'm just wanting to get a kind of an update of the 24-hour drop-in center that's happening in the winter months. Where are we with that? I mean, how close are we? Are the allocation of the spot, is it exactly where you want it to be right now? Where is that? Yeah.
So thanks for the question. I wish I could share all the details with SPC today. The purpose of bringing this funding allocation forward without those details is because we are moving, the situation is quite dynamic. We're in conversations with our existing shelter providers as well as the government of Alberta to dot the I's and cross the T's. What we didn't want to do is wait for that to take place and then have to begin the process to bring this funding request. So it is a little bit different, and then typically when you do see a funding request like the FCSS one, we have already identified who's going to receive and where, and so we are asking for this funding allocation without all the details, knowing that we are actively in those conversations and putting those together.
So in the unlikely event of, a week of minus 35 degrees, in the beginning of November, is this going to be effective?
So we would hope so, yes.
Yeah.
We're still working with a lot of unknowns. I think the big thing is though in extreme temperatures, we would rely on the city's emergency response to take effect, and so we would step back from that. The purpose of this is to partner with the government of Alberta and our shelter providers so that this is provided at one location, so that we have better operational efficiencies and learn from past years.
Good. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel?
Thank you very much on this. And this either to the mover or to one of our administrative team. In point 2, we have City Council delegates the approval of the estimated remaining balance of unallocated Reaching Home funding for the 23-2024 year. What is that estimated remaining balance?
So currently, if the $230,000 allocation goes, it is less than $10,000. And then it could grow between now and March 31st, either through underspent of existing agreements or potential cancellation of agreements should those occur. The reason that we've asked for that request is that we would like to spend all the dollars allocated to us by that year end. And if we are at a position in January, February, March, where we'd have to come to SPC and council to ask for it, we would then not be able to ultimately spend the dollars.
Okay, but we would eventually, or we would get a report back on how those dollars were spent, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Acting Mayor Middleton Hope.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair. This question is for Mr. Malcolm. So, Andrew, what we're looking at, I assume that this will be going out to an RFP or an RFQ.
So we will work with our procurement department to figure out the best and most appropriate means for that. We have to follow the parameters of the federal Reaching Home program as well. So sometimes those can be direct award, but all things are being considered at this point in time, and we'll do with engagement with procurement and legal service and financial.
Okay, thanks. So the funding that we're looking for here is specifically for the operating costs associated with the winter shelter?
No, I think a clarification I can make, if I may, is that this is for the 24-hour drop-in piece. We have to be particular that this funding is for the programming of drop-in center, not for shelter. They can be offered at the same facility, but the government of Alberta and the government of Canada are quite particular in making sure that they do not have an overlap or a duplication of funds. So government of Alberta funds would be for true shelter operations, which would be attributed to sleeping. Whereas drop-in center would be more aligned with daytime programming and truly trying to keep people warm.
Okay, and we have not got that location identified yet?
I can share that as a result of the rezoning of the existing shelter site, that is our utmost priority, and we're working through those details, although we can't confirm because we don't have that locked in just yet.
Okay. All right, thanks a lot.
Councillor Croson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure you're hearing the hesitation in many people's voices, right? Because they're saying money, but we don't know what. So this is a process question. It may be for the Deputy City Clerk or yourselves. Would be a recommendation to go on to council. Would have to be approved at council, which means there's some time delay in between. If the name of the contracted group was known in the meantime, could the recommendation be amended with the name coming to council? And so that could be either for the Deputy City Clerk as just a pure process question, or for Mr. Malcolm.
We could amend, so the recommendation would come to council in its current form, and if we know further information, we may amend that recommendation at council itself.
Okay. And Mr. Malcolm, would this come to the 31st or the first one in November? Based on timelines, I'm assuming this would make the 31st meeting? Okay, so is it possible you'd have that information by 31st? Not giving you a deadline, but is that a possibility?
It is a possibility. And I think if I may just add that one of the things that we will be looking to come back to SPC and council in the new year is a conversation around the amount of detail that is provided when we bring forward these funding allocation requests. I guess there is an identified risk that after we go through a competitive procurement process and then a decision of SPC or council is dependent or is made after a competitive process, that there could be exposure to some risk there. But for now, that is typically our process. So I think we can do our very best to bring forward that information as timely as possible and then look to SPC and council to whether or not they want to make the official amendment.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Malcolm. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I suspected, my colleagues would have asked all the same questions I had planned on asking. So unless there's anything further, I fully support moving on this speedily. So as we know, even next week, it's going to start getting cold. So unless there's anything further, I will call for the vote.
Anything else? Vote's been called. All in favor? And that passes. Okay. And we have from also Councillor Carlson. Be it resolved that the Cultural and Social Standing Policy Committee recommends that City Council receive the Shelter Development Strategy Quarterly Update Report as information. Councillor Carlson.
1 second here. I assumed there was going to be a bit of a verbal update, but it's in our package. I trust everyone's read it, so I'll ask if there's any questions that might spur a verbal update.
Does anyone have any questions? I think we had a pretty good...
Excellent. We've read it. Let's forward it on to our colleagues and thank Mr. Malcolm and his team.
Unless you have something to say, Mr. Malcolm.
Then I will call for the...
How about them Oilers? Anyway.
I'll call for the
vote.
vote.
The vote's been called. All in favor? That has been unanimous, and that ends our meeting. Thank you, everybody.
I don't know why we combined